Okay, so you're about to go into an interview for a child welfare worker position.
Wow.
That's amazing. Uh, it's such important work, and we are here to help you totally ace that interview.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility, right? It takes a really special kind of person to do this work.
Well, you need compassion, obviously, but also you got to be able to think on your feet and really understand those complex family dynamics.
For sure. So we're going to dive deep today. We're going to break down some of those common interview questions you might encounter, really get into what the interviewers are actually trying to figure out with these questions, and then give you like a solid framework for like crafting answers that really, really showcase what you bring to the table.
And we're going to go beyond just like the surface level interview stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to tap into some really insightful points from the career guide, to give you a real sense of what this job is really all about.
It's about more than just like memorizing the quote unquote right answers.
100%.
Let's dive into a question that tends to pop up pretty early on in these interviews.
Describe a situation in which you had to make a difficult decision regarding the placement of a child.
Oh boy. Yeah.
This one is, heavy, to say the least.
It is heavy, and you know what? It's meant to be.
Yeah.
Interviewers, they're not necessarily looking for a right answer here. You know what I mean? It's more about how you think under pressure, how you approach these ethically complex situations, and ultimately how you prioritize that child's well-being above all else.
So if you're hit with this question in an interview, how do you even begin to, approach that?
Honestly,
Yeah.
honesty and empathy, those are key. You gotta dig deep, think back on your experiences, and choose a situation that really tested your ability to make tough choices in this area. It doesn't have to be, the most extreme case you've ever encountered, but it should be one that lets you show how you think things through.
So you're saying it's more about, walking them through your reasoning than, presenting this perfect outcome?
Exactly. Did you, talk to everyone involved? Did you look at the situation from all angles? Most importantly, did you really consider what was best for the child? Even if it was hard. That's the good stuff. That's what they need to see.
It's about showing them that you can handle the weight of this role.
Yeah. That's a lot of responsibility.
Because it is.
You're making decisions that impact kids' lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what I think is interesting about this question is that it kind of hints at the emotional toll this work can take.
Oh, for sure. It's not easy.
Which the career guide actually talks about.
Right, and it goes back to what we were saying about honesty. You have to know yourself. You have to know what you can handle emotionally. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't possibly take care of these kids.
So true. Okay, let's move on to another question that I've heard can really throw people off.
Okay, bring it on.
Describe a time when you had to advocate for a child's rights in a challenging situation. Which it feels like almost every situation in child welfare has the potential to be, difficult.
Right, that's the name of the game. It's like every day you walk in and you know something's going to come up.
Yeah.
But that's what they're trying to get at with this question. They want to see your courage, your dedication, your willingness to be that voice for the child, especially when the system is failing them.
So it's not just about wanting to help.
Yeah.
It's about knowing how to navigate these really complex situations and actually make things better.
100%.
Right.
So did you follow the rules? Did you document everything? Did you work with your colleagues to find solutions? These are the things they're looking for.
It's like having a strong moral compass, but also knowing how to work within the system to actually protect the child.
Exactly. It's a tough balance. You got to be tough, but you got to be compassionate. You got to know the rules, but you got to be willing to bend them if it's the right thing to do for the child.
Right. And that kind of leads us to something else. The career guide emphasizes the importance of self-awareness in this field.
Huge. It's crucial.
Because you're constantly dealing with other people's emotions, their trauma.
Absolutely. If you don't know your own triggers, your own biases, you could end up doing more harm than good.
That's a powerful point.
Yeah.
And it's not something you can just fake in an interview.
Nope. You either have it or you don't. And if you don't, that's okay. Maybe this isn't the right field for you, and that's okay too.
It's about finding the right fit for you and for the families you'll be serving.
Exactly. You want to be passionate about this work. You want to feel like you're making a real difference.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears for a sec and talk about something that's crucial in this line of work, building trust.
So important. You can't help a family if they don't trust you.
Right. One question I see come up a lot is, how do you approach building trust with families and children, especially in difficult situations? What are interviewers really getting at with that one?
I think this question really gets at the heart of what child welfare work is all about, right? You're often coming into these families' lives during incredibly tough times, times when they might be feeling scared or judged or like they're being scrutinized. And your ability to build trust to make them feel seen and heard can make all the difference.
Absolutely. It's about so much more than just being like, oh, I'm here to help. It's about creating a genuine connection, a safe space where they feel comfortable opening up.
100%. If a family feels like you're judging them or you're not really listening, they're going to shut down. You're not going to get anywhere.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So let's say you're in the interview and you get hit with this question.
Yeah.
How do you actually convey that ability to build trust? Like, what concrete examples can you share?
Well, first and foremost, you got to be a good listener. Like, really listen. Not just waiting for your turn to talk, but actively trying to understand their perspective, their experiences, their fears,
Right. And not just listening, but showing them that you're listening.
Exactly. Reflecting back what you've heard, summarizing their feelings, making sure you're both on the same page.
Because it's one thing to hear the words, but it's another thing entirely to actually grasp the emotions, the experiences that are behind those words.
Totally. And that's where cultural sensitivity comes in, too, right?
Oh, huge. Every family is different.
Exactly. You got to meet people where they are. You got to respect their culture, their beliefs, their values.
And have you had any training in cultural competency? Have you worked with diverse families in the past? Those are all things you'd want to highlight in an interview.
Absolutely. It shows them that you're committed to meeting families on their own terms, respecting their unique needs and backgrounds.
Okay, so we've talked about building trust with families, but what about teamwork? Child welfare work is definitely not a solo gig. It takes a village.
Tell me about it. You're constantly collaborating with social workers, therapists, teachers, lawyers, the list goes on and on.
So how do you handle conflicts or disagreements that might come up within that team context? Because, everyone has different opinions, different ways of approaching things.
Yeah, and that's okay. Disagreement can be a good thing. But it's how you handle it that matters.
Right. There's a question in the interview guide that addresses this directly. How do you handle conflicts or disagreements with colleagues or supervisors?
And I bet the avoid section probably warns against saying something like, oh, I never have conflicts.
You know it because that's just not realistic.
Nobody agrees with everyone all the time.
Exactly. So this question is about showing them that you can navigate those disagreements professionally and productively.
And that you can do it while keeping the child's best interests front and center.
Always.
Yeah.
So how do you actually do that? Like, what's the best way to approach a question like this in an interview?
I think it goes back to active listening. Being able to truly hear where the other person is coming from, even if you don't agree with them.
Yeah.
And then, being willing to find common ground, to compromise, to work together, to find a solution that benefits everyone involved, especially the child.
And knowing when to escalate an issue versus when to kind of let something go for the sake of team cohesion.
Right. You don't want to be the person who's always running to the boss, but you
Yeah.
also don't want to be a doormat. It's about finding that balance.
Totally.
Yeah.
And speaking of balance, let's talk about staying informed.
Mm-hmm.
This field is constantly changing new laws, new policies, new research coming out all the time. How do you stay on top of it all?
Right, because it's not enough to just know what you learned in school. You got to be willing to keep learning throughout your career.
Exactly. There's another question in the guide that gets at this. How do you stay current with laws and policies related to child welfare?
And you know what? A lot of people probably freeze up when they hear this question because they're afraid of not having the perfect answer. They're worried about listing every single journal article they've ever read.
I can see that happening.
But it's not about that at all. It's really about showing them that you're actively engaged in the field, that you're committed to ongoing learning and professional development.
So it's not enough to just be like, oh yeah, I read articles sometimes.
Right. Give them specifics. Have you attended any conferences or workshops recently? Are you a member of any professional organizations? Do you subscribe to any relevant publications? These are the things that show them you're serious about staying ahead of the curve.
So it's about being proactive, seeking out opportunities to learn and grow.
Exactly. It shows initiative,
Yeah.
that you're not just waiting for someone to tell you what to do, but
Yeah.
that you're actively seeking out ways to improve your skills and knowledge.
Right. And that reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the importance of self-awareness.
Huge in this field.
Because if you know your weaknesses, you can actively work on them.
Exactly. And you can seek out training or mentorship to fill in those gaps. Nobody's perfect. We all have areas where we can improve. And that's okay as long as you're willing to put in the work.
So true. So we've covered a lot of ground here today, from handling difficult decisions to advocating for children's rights to building trust with families. It's a lot to think about.
It is. It's a challenging field, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. Absolutely. So before we wrap up, is there one piece of advice, one takeaway you would give to our listener who's about to head into that child welfare worker interview?
I would say remember why you're doing this. Remember that every question they ask you is really about one thing, making sure you're the right person to support these vulnerable children and families. So be yourself, be honest, let your passion shine through, and trust your gut. You got this.
I love that advice. Be yourself, be honest, and let your passion shine through. This has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure, honestly. I'm so glad we could do this. It's so important to support folks who are going into this field. You know, the work they do is just so vital.
Absolutely. And to our listener, we know you're going to rock that interview. You've got this.